Well, welcome to the Real Life Podcast today. Yes, you're with your host, Rob Elliott. I have an amazing man who's come all the way from America. As you know, we do mostly international guests these days. He lives in Clinton, Maryland. He is a certified life and business coach. He is part of a movement which is all about getting entrepreneurs and small business people to absolutely excel. He's self-employed. He's a family man. Welcome to the podcast, Eric Twiggs. How are you, buddy?
Fantastic. Thank you for having me on your show.
Mate, great to see. What's life like over in the US at the moment? It's a beautiful summer here in Australia.
Well, it's in the low 40s here. So yeah, it's cold. We're getting into that winter time of season. So
a bit snowy.
It hasn't snowed yet here.
Yep.
Different parts of the United States it has, but here the snow hasn't gotten to us yet.
Yes.
I give it a few weeks. I'm sure it's coming.
So where did you grow up in the States? It's a beautiful big country and lots of places to live in.
Yeah, I grew up in the nation's capital. I grew up in Washington, D.C.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And what was that like, living in a hustle and bustle of the country?
Yeah, it's fast paced, and I mean, to this day, I have that sense of urgency in my step just from because that's just the environment.
Yeah.
And I remember the summers. So my dad is from South Carolina, and it's the South. It's much slower, more relaxed, and I would go crazy over the summers because I'm so used to the fast pace and the hustle.
Yeah. What did you spend some time down there?
Yeah. So yeah, during the summers we would go. That's where my grandmother lived, and so we'd go down, and it was a country lifestyle. You had to feed the chickens and everything else.
Yeah.
And I just wasn't used to it. I'm used to the city, that hustle. And that just influenced my college choices and everything else.
Mate, sometimes in life you need a little bit of balance to get away and recalibrate.
Yeah, it gives you good perspective if you're seeing how different styles of life, different styles of living.
So were you a good student, or were you one of the kids that sat down the back and disrupted the class?
No, ironically enough, I was a procrastinator.
Really?
I think, interesting. Like I always did well with like writing and English. I mean, I always got good grades in those classes, but I don't, and I always tell people that I think clarity is the starting point of success. And I don't think I was really, at the time, I wasn't clear on what my purpose was and what it was that I wanted to do. And so I don't think I focused a lot of times like I could have.
Wow. So we are going to get into that. It's all about procrastination. And I know that that's one of your passions, is helping people with procrastination, especially in business. When you left school, did you go to uni, or where did you end up when you decided to move on?
Yeah, so I was at Hampton University.
Yep.
And that's really where my whole that's where my story started. Because people always ask me, Eric, how did you become your procrastination prevention partner? It started in Hampton. I can tell you the quick backstory.
Yeah.
So it was my senior year, and I was having this conversation with my friend Donnell. Now, I have to be honest, at that time, Donnell and I, we were a little different. He was all about his purpose, and I was all about the party. And he would always give me a hard time. He'd say, Eric, man, you need to get serious. You need to figure out what you want to do. Yep. And I'm like, Donnell, loosen up. We're still young. We have plenty of time to figure all that out. Are you coming to the party with me or not? And so time goes by. He and I, we lose contact. But then I get a phone call from his mother informing me of the fact that he was killed in a car accident.
Wow. And how did that affect you?
Yeah, it sent me a clear message that maybe I don't have the time that I think to do the things that I want to do. And really that's what started my focus on time management, my focus on overcoming procrastination, and my focus on becoming more productive. That's where it really started.
So now you coach people around the world on procrastination, and we've seen how it can paralyze a business. How did you get from that moment in your life, which was obviously a challenge, to being a life and business coach, concentrating on procrastination and helping people be the best business people they can?
It's interesting. So Initially, I thought that the message from that experience was I needed to climb the corporate ladder
Yep.
as fast as possible. I needed to achieve success because time was short. So that's what I focused on. When I got out of college, I said I need to get to the top of that ladder.
Mm.
And I got to the point where you could argue that I was successful. You could say that I was successful. I was a district manager in the automotive service field. I had 17 locations. I had
Wow.
500 employees. We were winning these awards for being #1 in profit. I'm driving in my nice BMW. And I remember this plain as day. I stopped at the light one day. I looked in my rearview mirror, and the eyes that were looking back at me were the eyes of someone who hated what he was doing.
Oh no.
You could see it in my eyes. It was I dreaded the idea of going in, and that taught me that it's really not about being successful. It's more about significance.
Yeah.
So I had to go back and figure out, okay, what is it that I really want to do? It's got to be more. And when you're asking yourself, there's got to be more. What is it? That's when
Mm.
you know you're seeking out fulfillment.
Yeah.
And that's really what it's about for me. And I had to really dig deep and think, okay, when did I feel fulfilled?
Yeah.
And I always went back to when I was a corporate trainer or when I was presenting something to a group.
Yeah.
I remember, and I would always think to myself, man, I could just do this all day, every day. There's got
Yeah.
to
I
be a
agree
way
with
for
you,
me,
mate. I agree
right?
with you.
You know, yeah, there's got to be a way that I could just do this. You mean to tell me people actually get paid to do this? And I would, and that was it. So and I started to speak about overcoming procrastination and becoming more productive. And then people would pull me to the side
Mm.
and, hey, do you offer coaching? And I'm like, coaching? And or I'd be out and somebody be tell me about their time management issues, and so that it just evolved into where we are right now.
Yeah, mate. I know what it was like the first time I walked out on stage or did a thing and people clapped and came up and said, "How are you?" Before we get into procrastination, what was it like for you when the first time you walked out and people gave you a round of applause and you put smiles on people's faces and you just felt, oh wow.
It was awesome. Yeah, it was, again, it just felt like is that feeling that this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah,
And then, afterwards people are coming up and, and when they would look at me the same way I looked at the speakers that I wanted to emulate.
yeah,
I would look at the Dr. Willie Jollies, the Les Browns, and then there were people that would pull me, hey, Eric, how can I become a speaker? Man, that's excellent. And so, yeah, that was a sign that was the lane I was supposed to be in.
mate. I'm going to go straight to the point. Why do people procrastinate, especially in business?
It's more complicated than you would think, right? So some of it is task aversion,
Yeah.
right? So sometimes it's a task that you just don't like to do.
Mm.
So you just put it off as long as you possibly can. But here's the thing, and I wish someone would have told me this, that just because something has to be done, it doesn't mean that you have to do it, right? I mean, you can delegate, you can set up systems so that it gets done without you having to touch it. So some of it is the task aversion piece, but some of it is fear.
Yeah.
A lot of times you're afraid of, especially if it's something that's going to move you forward, if it's something that's aspirational.
Yep.
So a lot of times when you start to move in that direction, you start hearing that voice in your head that
Yep.
says, can you really do this? Or what's this going to mean? Or how's this going to change everything? Are you up to it? And that causes people to delay.
Do you think sometimes that limiting beliefs that have been created along the way then start to affect people and can actually magnify the procrastination?
Sure. Especially like there are a lot of people that have limiting beliefs about money.
Yes.
They feel like they're a bad person if they become wealthy,
Mm.
that they'll become a bad person, and or they're afraid that they can't charge they feel guilty about charging the full value of their service,
Yeah.
or they have a belief that, oh no, people can't afford this, or people, it's a tough economy. So no, you bring up a great point. The limiting beliefs, especially around money, can produce procrastination.
Have you ever gone or had a client where They're absolutely passionate about their business. They know their knowledge is second to none. The business is good, but because of procrastination, they're actually strangling the business that they love.
Yes, absolutely.
And how do you approach someone like that?
So the key is I help people to, and then the other thing, the book is helpful with this too. It helps you to become aware of your patterns.
Hmm.
Because like I have, like people say, "Oh, Eric, I always procrastinate." No, you don't always procrastinate. Like I've yet to meet somebody that just procrastinates with everything. It's usually it's usually around a specific thing.
Yeah.
Like for some entrepreneurs, it's whenever it comes to hiring a key person,
Hmm.
because really they're afraid. They're afraid, can I afford this person? What's it going to mean? What if this person doesn't work out? I don't really want to give up control. I'm afraid to give up control. So I bring this person in. What am I going to do? So that's the key. So I help people to, so sometimes when somebody is making an excuse or they're delaying, I'll ask them, I'll just say, okay, let's put our cards on the table. What are you afraid of?
Yeah.
And it comes out. And that's usually something that's causing them to procrastinate.
I found in my experience, a lot of micromanagers are also big procrastinators,
Yes.
and they like to hide behind the process rather than make the decision. What do you think about that?
Oh, I think that's extremely true. I think sometimes when they micromanage, they're hiding in their comfort zone.
Yeah.
There's an aspect of the business that they're really good at.
Yeah.
But to go to the next level, a lot of times you have to be able to replace yourself in the business.
I suppose it comes down to the difference between managers and leaders, doesn't it? Leaders, as a rule, don't procrastinate.
An effective leader
Yes.
won't procrastinate on those key things. No.
So what do you do if I've got someone listening to this podcast from around the world and they're a little bit of a procrastinator and they're looking for a way out? What can we tell them, or how can we help them today?
Well, the big thing, again, it's awareness. Really think about the patterns. Think about when you find yourself procrastinating, there's usually a common thing. And then one key thing I could suggest is getting in the habit of making appointments with yourself.
Okay.
I mean, this is so critical. So for example, instead of saying, yeah, this week I'm going to work on hiring a key employee, and then you get to Friday at 5 o'clock and you haven't done anything.
Yep.
Instead say, okay, on Tuesday at 1 o'clock, from 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock, I'm making an appointment with myself to recruit and hire.
Yeah.
Put it on your calendar. And I found that if it's on your calendar, the chances of you actually doing it go up by 80%.
So you also go through time management. Is that why you use time management as a tool to help people with procrastination?
Yes. And so what happens a lot of times, people will say, especially someone if they're a chronic procrastinator, you'll ask them something and everything is, I just didn't have time.
Yep.
I just didn't have time. Well, that's not the case. Really, it wasn't important enough for you, because if something is important, you'll find the time. Like I've had people who we have a scheduled call, set date, set time, and everything. I ask them, they say I don't have time, and I would say, well, how did you have time for my call? And it's, well, I had it on my calendar.
Wow. So I mean, we've all got the same amount of time, and if a Gary Vee or any of the other big entrepreneurs around the world have the same time as us and they can make millions, there's no excuse, is there?
Right. I mean, if you look at like the Richard Branson and some of these people, the things that they're able to get done with the same amount of time. I mean, and one of the things I always share with people is that whatever challenge you think you have, there's someone with that same challenge or even worse challenge that's making it happen.
Yeah.
Like also on my podcast, the 30-minute hour, we had her name is Dr. Latarsha Holden, and she's got 6 kids, and she was homeless. And while she was homeless with 6 kids, she goes on to get her PhD and ends up writing 13 books.
Oh, wow.
So it's like if you really want to, there's always a way.
Yeah. And I always find that language is like leaves the clues to somebody being a procrastinator. If someone wants to know, am I or aren't I? Yeah, they're in the big. What type of words or language do people use who are chronic procrastinators?
Well, a lot of times they'll say, "I am a procrastinator,"
Yeah,
and that's dangerous because like when anything that comes after "I am," that's an identity statement. So you're
yeah,
going to be more likely to do it if you keep saying "I am." Where
mm,
procrastination is more of a habit or behavior that you're able to change. Then the other thing is they'll say "I can't." Oh no, I can't. It's not that you can't. It's you haven't yet. It's
yeah.
so
Like I'll try.
that
You
can't.
never
Oh,
do.
right, right. That's one that really gets me. Yeah, I'll try. And are you gonna? Are you gonna do it or you're not?
Yeah,
It's one or two. There's no try.
man, that's so true. I bar any of my clients from that word. Not allowed to say it because it just, as you
That's
just said,
good.
it doesn't.
No, that's good. Yeah, I feel a kinship with you. 'Cause I thought I was the only one struggling with that. I'll try thing. People saying that to me.
Oh man, you've got to set some boundaries. Uh, I'm going to go back to you've had a lot of clients and you've helped a lot of people. Who, without mentioning their name, has been the toughest client for you to break the procrastination cycle, and how did you do it?
Ooh. uh well, let's see. Yeah, I had one
Yep.
in particular who this was challenging just because you had like other family members. He would procrastinate, but then you had other family members who would just disagree with him. It was just kind of a toxic situation.
Yeah.
I mean, they would literally disagree with whatever he said,
Yeah.
and so that just compounded the problem. So there was issues with him procrastinating on things, and he would try to work through them, and then they would just, no matter what it was, they would just disagree.
Yep.
And so one of the things we worked on was, instead of dictating to them, to the family, it was his son and it was his wife, and no matter
Yeah.
what, they just disagreed. And what we worked on was, instead of dictating like it's coming, hey, this is an order, make it like it's their idea.
Yeah.
When you broach it to them, hey, what do you think? Or hey, I'm considering, have you considered? So we changed the words around and made it less. So the problem was they were all like type A personalities.
Yeah.
And as soon as they thought you were telling them what to do, they just resisted.
Yes.
And it was the same with him. And so once we got past that, we changed the wording around. It really started to move forward. But
Mm.
that was challenging just because not only was I dealing with him, but I'm dealing, with family members as well.
Do you think he was using some of his outside influences as an excuse not to break the cycle?
I think
Yeah.
at times, yeah. Oh yeah, they just I talked to him about it, but sometimes it was just because he wasn't comfortable with it himself. So I think you had some of that. But yeah, that was a challenge.
Do you think a lot of procrastinators, sorry, uh, lack self-confidence?
That could be some of it,
Yeah.
in a lot of cases. If you're questioning if you can accomplish something, if you don't think it's possible, yeah, I think that could be part of it.
Yeah.
Because that's all what it is. It's a lot of times you may have a fixed mindset,
Yeah.
right? You have the Carol Dweck wrote the book Mindset. You have the growth mindset. If you feel like, hey, you know what, I can always get better,
Yep.
you're going to be less likely to procrastinate. And you'll feel more confident than if you feel like, well, I'm just not smart enough. Yeah, I'm just not intelligent. I'm just not good with business. I mean, so people have said that I'm not good with numbers. I'm not that. So yeah, if you lack confidence from that standpoint, where you have a fixed mindset, that can cause you to procrastinate.
It's a little bit of what Simon Sinek talks about, the infinite and the finite mind. And
Yes,
uh, just by changing the question or changing how you word something, it can make a massive difference.
yes.
What about when you're in a manager and you've got a couple of people below you that are starting to show signs of procrastination or are big procrastinators? People react differently to suggestions or they take everything as criticism. When you're working, downwards, as in towards people who report to you. How does a manager then get somebody to understand that they are a procrastinator? And what can a manager do to help them start to break the cycle to improve what they're doing?
Good question. So the consistency is the key. A lot of times, there's this perception out there that you have to be this
Yeah.
real nasty, mean person to get people to move. I don't think that's the case. I think the key is just consistency. So one of the things I recommend is if you have if you can have a scheduled one-on-one meeting
Yep.
with a subordinate, and if it's the same day at the same time,
Yep.
just that creates accountability because they know, okay, on Thursday at 1 o'clock, I'm going to have to talk to Robert about my performance. And I know he's going to ask me if I did this. And I don't want to have to keep telling him I'm not doing my job. So even if you go to the meeting and you say, hey, Eric, did you fill that report out? Or how'd you do with the report?
Yeah.
He's going to feel really bad, even if you're not yelling at him.
Yeah.
And over time, that's going to send a message that, hey, I need to, on Wednesday or that early Thursday, he's going to make sure he's got everything for that meeting.
Yeah. Mate, that's so true. When you look back now, you've been coaching and looking after procrastination online and everywhere else for quite a while now. From when you first started to where you are now, what's been the biggest thing you've learnt along the way through experience and influences outside?
Well, I think the biggest thing is, people are different. You have different personality types.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing is not everybody's like me. Like I'm just your typical type A personality. I am, like when I was in the working world, if you were my supervisor and you said, hey, Eric, this has to be done, you just have to tell me that one time. That's my priority. I'm like, hey, this is what the boss says. But a lot of people aren't wired that way.
Especially.
It's just interesting. And so it's what I've learned over the years is you have to, it helps to meet people where they are. And so my thing, especially when I first started out in leadership, I'm like, okay, what part of this didn't you understand? But there's some people that you really have to, you have to follow up. They need extra levels of follow up. Some people are more detail oriented, where you literally have to spell things out for them to get it. So I think the big learning over the years is just tailoring my approach to the situation.
And and a lot of entrepreneurs, it's the same. They're different people with different ways of doing things. Some entrepreneurs don't need anyone; they just get focused, and that's where the energy goes. But I've also heard that some entrepreneurs need a mentor that occasionally can give them a kick, going, "What are you doing?" Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think everybody could benefit from a mentor.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But I do think some people would benefit more from that external accountability than others. Like some people really could benefit. You need that accountability partner. You need that coach. You need that person to really check in to make sure that you're doing, because some people like me, I'm internally motivated. But then there's some people that are more external, where they're more likely to work out if they're meeting a group, or if they've got a fitness coach that's meeting them there, because they know there's external accountability. But I would say, I think everybody can benefit from having a mentor. And I think everybody, no matter where you are, should seek out someone who has the result that you aspire to.
So who would be your mentor if you could choose anyone in the world?
If I
Apart from your wife.
Right. Yeah, but my wife's my mentor. I'm just trying to think. So I would say, Tony Robbins, I'm sure would be a good mentor. Just from the standpoint of the people that he has impacted. That's one of the reasons that I do what I do, because I want to impact people and change their life. And like when I look at him, there are countless people, and some of these people are world famous themselves.
Yeah.
They point to a time where, hey, you know what? I heard his tape and it changed my life.
Yes.
I was struggling. I was depressed, but then I heard his tape. I watched his infomercial one day, and now I'm this big successful person.
Yeah.
So from that standpoint, the fact that he was able to, impact people's lives to that degree, I would say that he would be someone that would be good.
So what's for our listeners, what's the 30-minute hour podcast all about?
Right. So it's an inspirational personal development podcast. I'm the host. Ted Fells is my co-host. He's an entrepreneur. He's been the CEO of his IT company for over 25 years. He's had other successful businesses. And we always say it's not your everyday podcast.
That's good.
Well, yes, we talk about business. We're both we're business minded, and we've had success in our arenas, but we keep it light. He and I are personal friends. I think that the chemistry comes across. All we do, Robert, we take shots at each other through the entire episode.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but it's good. And the guests, we always get feedback from our guests about how fun it was being on the show. Because I think, sometimes people, it's a podcast, so they show up kind of nervous and tight, but we're so, conversational with our flow.
Yeah.
And we have some high level influencers on the podcast that have done some good things. So that's the 30-minute hour podcast.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned very early in the interview about a book. You've released a book, have you?
Yeah. So my book, it's titled The Discipline of Now.
Yeah.
12 practical principles to overcome procrastination.
Okay. And what was the inspiration for that, and how long did it take you to write it?
So I wanted to put a tool in people's hands that was useful to them. So my frustration when I would look at other books on procrastination or time management, it was a lot of the same information. It was a lot of, you have to wake up at 4 a.m. You can't check your email past a certain time. It was a lot of the cookie cutter stuff. So I wanted something that, even if you're not a morning, because a lot of people feel bad because they don't wake up at 4 early in the morning. You don't have to. You don't have to be, wake up at 4 and have done, run 2 marathons by the time it's 8 o'clock. You don't have to do that. So my book, it provides useful tools to people no matter what your tendencies are.
Yeah.
You can be a morning person, you can be a night owl. You don't have to be necessarily a type A personality like me.
Yep.
You can be somebody that's more of the paralysis by analysis type person, but you can pick up things that can help you to move forward.
Yeah. So my last 2 questions for you is, what message would you give to people starting out on the entrepreneur journey, as we call it these days?
Yeah, I would say that the key for me, because I'm often asked, like, what does success mean? Yeah. For me, success is staying on that journey, the journey towards becoming your best possible self.
Yeah.
So I think the focus should be just what can you do to get better? What can you do? It's a journey. And a lot of times we're waiting for this moment where we can be happy and feel satisfied, right? Yeah. But then when you get to where you think you wanted to get, you realize that you had a good thing all along.
Yes,
really, I mean, if you think about it, like, you need to appreciate your family, your wife, your kids, your friend. You need to appreciate the good things you have, your health, the things you have, but at the same time, you need to be diligent on that journey to improving and getting better.
And what would you tell a 20-year-old Eric if you were standing on the corner in Washington growing up, that looking back now, you wished you knew?
Well, I would say that you have to lean into those things that make you different. Yeah. And I think when you're a younger person, there's always that temptation to want to fit in, to want to conform and be like everybody else. Yeah. But when you get in business, the people that are highly successful in business, they have differentiated themselves. Yeah. They're unique. And so the message I would have for 20-year-old Eric is that lean into those things that make you different.
Yeah. I tell all of my clients the one thing: just be you.
Absolutely.
You know. Eric, it's been an absolute pleasure to interview you today. In the show notes, I'll put all the contact details for people so they can get hold of your podcast, look for your book, find out how to get in touch with you, because I think you are unique in what you do, and I think you've got a story that people should engage in. I don't think a lot of people realise that if they could cure their procrastination, their business, their personal life, everything would absolutely rock on. Thank you so much for joining us. And as we say at the end of every day, have a groovy day. Have a great day, mate. Talk to you later.